It is the calm before the storm, college football fans, and especially those of you who are locked in on recruiting. The floodgates are about to open, and we've got Andrew Hattersley on the line to track us on Texas A&M. You can catch Andrew's work on Gig'em 247 Sports. Andrew, how are we doing today?
Good, and you? Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
I think this week is kind of you're right. I think calm before the storm is probably the perfect word in terms of official visitors and unofficial visitors and camps. I can't imagine kind of planning everything for next month in terms of
I hope that you're getting full nights of sleep now.
Yeah, the full nights of sleep are coming now, probably not in the future.
So basically, Jimbo Fisher and his staff have loaded up each individual weekend throughout the month of June. So that's 4 consecutive weekends with a lot of top-line recruits headed toward College Station. So let's start with that weekend of June 4th and let us know who's coming in and just your basic thoughts on their performance on the field and where you think Texas A&M stands in regards to a lean at this point.
Yeah, so I think the first weekend kind of kicks off with a lot of it's kind of a mix of important targets. They'll have, right out of the gate, they'll have Denver Harris, who has a top 4 of Alabama, Texas A&M, and LSU, and each of them are going to get an official visit. So Texas A&M kind of gets the first chance. Harold Perkins is a guy he's not expected to decide for quite a while, but he's going to be coming into town with a lot of his friends, and Bobby Taylor will be there, and other guys, including Malik Silla, Connor Wiegman, PJ Williams, and Donovan Green. These are all kind of Houston area guys that are commits that are all coming in town that weekend as well for their official visits. And then they'll have another commit from out of state, Isaiah Centenia. He's from Arkansas. And then another Houston guy, couple of Houston guys, Chris Marshall and Bryce Anderson, who are both uncommitted. Bryce Anderson currently has a decision date for July 4th set, so that's another kind of important weekend in terms of this. It's almost one of your last final pitches, and I know he really wants to, during that weekend, sit down and watch film with the coaches and kind of learn kind of the defensive scheme in person. Then the final one is somebody who recently confirmed as Anthony Lucas, coming from Arizona. So you kind of have everybody coming from all over the country. But it'll be a really important weekend because for a lot of these 2022 recruits, this is their first chance to truly meet coaches in person for a lot of them. And so I know the coaches are anxious to get going and especially with a lot of their commits and start to get to know them better as well.
Andrew, this question's a bit of a stretch based on what you just told me, because this is unlike any other year where the availability to campus formally, and it's a difficult ask for these student athletes to have visited on their own dime. So this is where we are. I know I saw some numbers fairly recently that compared the commitment level and the sheer volume in numbers previous years compared to this one. It's not even close. We're talking 10 or 15% maybe of the commits that we normally have at this point of the year, for good reason. They need to get on campus and visit with the coaching staff and see the campus. That said, do you have a pretty good feel for, out of the guys that you just listed, who's a strong Texas A&M lean at this point versus who may be on the outer circle?
The two guys I feel like they're kind of in a good spot for is Harold Perkins and Chris Marshall. Those are two guys that have developed really close relationships with the coaching staff. And again, kind of looking at that Houston area of recruits, these are two guys that are very close with a lot of the Texas A&M commits that are currently in the class. But neither of them, I think, is expected to decide until late in the fall or the summer. So the key will kind of be to get them on campus now, kind of have your official visit weekend, and then try to get them back in the fall again for maybe a game or just try to keep them in the fold and keep them at games. Those are probably the two. I think they've got some work to do with Bryce Anderson. So this weekend will be kind of their chance to sell him. Anthony Lucas is a hard guy to get a feel for because he doesn't do a whole lot of interviews, and he's kind of out on the West Coast. So we haven't got a great chance to talk with him. And then I think with Denver Harris as well, they're going to have to knock it out of the park that weekend as well with Alabama getting probably the final chance to sell him before he makes a decision later this summer. I think they've got some work there to do. But of that first weekend, I think the guys that they're probably in the best shape for are probably Harold Perkins and Chris Marshall.
All the players you mentioned are top 10 in their positions, and most of them closer to the top than the bottom. So we're talking about some top level recruits coming in that first weekend on June 4th. Okay, Andrew,
swinging, right? Come right
absolutely. You might as well go for the best right out of the gate. Which leads me to this question. As a recruiting guy who's followed this for a long time and certainly talks to other recruiting analysts that have possibly covered it for even longer, is there a general thought that it's best to get these guys on campus for the first visit before they go other places and kind of get entrenched as the number one candidate, or maybe make that last impression and be the last visit?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I think you can make arguments both ways. I think in this case, it might be better to get that first visit just because so many of these kids have never been on campus before. Like for a lot of them, this is their first visit. So you kind of get the chance to set the bar and maybe set the standard where, they're kind of always looking back at the visits to come, kind of comparing it back to your visit and keeping you in the fold. They're always going to kind of remember that first visit. For certain guys, for certain programs, it's tough when somebody like Alabama gets the last official visit. You kind of look at Nick Saban and his history of closing on recruits. For somebody like him, it's probably better to get the last visit where you can kind of leave that lasting impression before they go elsewhere. So it's a really tough question, especially this year. But I don't think it's bad to get the first visit and kind of set the bar and really, really impress them coming right out of the gates.